So, sure. Why don't you guys come in the front? Okay, all right. Now, can you, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah A'raf, we were reading Surah A'raf. I just want to recap the sequence. There was a general discussion in the Surah. Then we came onto the story of Iblis and Adam and Iblis's insubordination. Then we came to the story of Adam and what happened to Adam and the whole of the issue of garments, piety, covering our blemishes, acquiring a loftier state of being in existence. Then we came to brief accounts of the stories of the prophets and the punishments that their people got. Now, I'm going to recap here because normally this is the sequence that comes out. Nabi Nuh, yes? Then you have Nabi Hud, then you have Nabi Saleh, then you have Lut, then you normally have Shu'aib, and then you normally have Moses, yes? And that's it. You will find this sequence reoccurring within the Quran of these prophets again and again, 4 or 5 surahs as this sequence. Because historically, that is how it happened. But there are certain variations. Some of them have signs, some of them don't have signs, some of them have warnings, and I want to explain this just a little bit before we go into today's reading. In this particular surah, only a brief mention is made of them. There is not much detail, as if the main causes for their damnation has been mentioned. Now, to be repeating this to the Meccans again and again, either means that they knew of the stories of their forefathers, yes, and then they heard of Moses through the Jewish scriptures, yes, because Hud and Saleh are known as the fathers of the Arabs, yes, because they were before Nabi Ibrahim. Or it means that the Quran intrigued them into going and learning about them and saying to them that, look, you're following in the same pattern. This is a recurring cyclic event. It will not change now. However, there is something intriguing in the accounts that are being given. With Nabi Saleh, there is a sign, the camel, as we will see now. But Nabi Nuh, there wasn't a sign as such that they belied. With the people of Hud, there wasn't a sign. So sometimes there are signs, sometimes there aren't any signs. Can you see that? Now, upon analysis, this is what we find, and I mentioned this last week or week before, that in the case of Nabi Nuh, what appears to be happening is that the floods are coming and they are on their way. Yes? And Nuh, Salamullah alayhi, before time is awoken. And he is there to warn his people, look, something terrible is going to happen that's not happened before. You better start mending your ways. But what does that mean? What that means is that in the case of Nabi Nuh, the people's sins, transgressions, were not the cause for the mighty calamity that came. The mighty calamity was en route to them. Yes? And they could have averted it. What this means is that it may not have been integrated within the system, but it was an intervention of God to send Nabi Nuh to say, look, something like this is going to happen. You mend your ways. Now, had they mend their ways, what would have happened? Would they have been saved because their region would have been kept intact? If that's the case, then they then become the active agents within the world, in the greater dynamics of the world, in allowing the world, making God acting through the world to avert that devastation. But the devastation was not brought about primarily because of their actions in this case. But they could have averted it by becoming active agents in their creation of their own destiny through the world and through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanding it through natural events. And after that transpired, we would have found natural sequences of causation to explain it all away. Their denial then did what? Brought about 2 or 3 things from wider reading. That Nabi Nuh says, destroy them, God, because they're not going to produce any better than this. Yes? It was as if they reached a culmination, yes, in their obstinate behavior, where then the destiny of their destruction became final. When that happens, then in that case, a second plan comes into being. Then in that case, then, construct an ark. And we will deliver you and those with you. Can you see that? So here we are seeing something phenomenal. We are saying that the prophets are coming at times independent of the people and their state, and at times they are coming as a result of what is about to transpire. As if it is an intervention from the divine to ward off that evil consequence. Now you might say that, well, the divine mind knows what's going to happen before it happens. Yes? The mistake that theologians and the philosophers are making, the mystics ought not to make this mistake, is that everything is in the absolute present. So the absolute present is eternal and undetermined at the same time. Eternal because it's only now, and undetermined because the one who is within the absolute now can determine as in how he wants. And this is the notion of bada, the change of course of destiny. And this is what's been given to us within our text, that the knowledge of kursi is available to the prophets, but the knowledge of the arsh is not. Or yamhullah wa yasha wa yuthbit, Allah wipes clean whatever He wants and He establishes. Destiny is there, but He intervenes and cleans whatever He wants, shapes and reshapes it. Bal yadahu mabsutatan, rather both His hands are open. He's not confined by a system of causation that He Himself has created. So we're finding a very unique story within the stories of the prophets, that they are not all the same. There are different elements at play. Sometimes the human beings are producing the evil consequences through a variety of transgressions that they commit. Sometimes natural events are taking place in which human beings are going to be involved. They are going to be delivered either by prophets, groups of them, or all of them. Now, why do I say this as we go into these discussions? وَظَنُّونِ الذَّهَبَ مُغَاضِبًا. Dhannun, he preached. He said, fine, may God destroy you, as He has promised. They saw the clouds of dust or whatever was approaching them. There was an imam that the Prophet had left behind. Imam then separated them, they became repentant. He separated them into groups. And he asked each group to pray individually. So the children were praying separately from the old people, from the young. The reason he did that was, least the sincerity of the prayer of one group is tarnished by the lack of sincerity of the prayer of the other group and the lack of belief. As a result, Allah says, "We averted the adab altogether," which shows active agency of the community in averting a natural event. It's quite possible that Nabi Nuh was an intervention like this to avert that great calamity. The floods were going to come, but it would have just circumambulated them or circled around them and gone, due to forces that we are yet to unravel, understand, because we only have access to this three-dimensional world in which we exist. It's only now that we're beginning to venture further into saying that actually there's more to it than what we can see with our eyes and perceive with our sense perception. There's much more to it. So the stories of the prophets are revealing things that are quite intriguing. The question arises, Arabs had no clue that these things were being imparted to them when these verses were being recited to them. It's only today that we can reflect, right? Especially the Meccans to whom these verses were being recited, because they did not have the hindsight of reading the whole Quran cover to cover and then trying to analyze them. They were encountering these verses first time. That shows the charm and the beauty of the Quran, that it is manageable to the listener at the level of the listener in any given era. Can you see that? So it's got things inside there interwoven that cannot be deciphered by every reader in every era. It is meant to be unraveled with the passage of time. Yes? With the input of the collective intellect as it converges at every era for the benefit of the collective accumulated intellect historically. It's beautiful. The way we see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leaving signs everywhere. And this is what I say, that for me the miracle of the Quran is its high level of consistency. The words being used are the same. Yes? You will see that the prophets will say, Fatir samawati wal ard. The mu'mineen in the Quran will say, yes, we believe in his message of the Fatir samawati. The Fatir is carried on. Not that they said Fatir, but they meant Fatir. And it's so accurate a description. Fatir samawati wal ard. And it's so consistent. In the stories of the Prophet, if Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was just saying it all aloud, then how did he get this consistency, this huge level of consistency? That one thing is stated one time and another one after 10 years, and he himself doesn't read or write. Yes? To be quite honest with you, not reading and not writing is quite possible. Huh? I know many people who just could not read or could not write. And once they learned how to read and write, they lost their intuitive abilities to understand the truth. As soon as they became confined to reading and writing, their intuitive abilities were dampened. But before learning how to read and write, they were saintly. They could tell everything. They could understand. But as soon as they became confined to letters and learning other people's thoughts, the intuition that they had was reduced. In any case, we read about Nabi Nuh. The other thing, these stories of the prophets and the sequence that they come are telling us is different levels of transgressions. Now it asks us to think beyond our initial naive appreciations, especially the things that affect us theologically in our sects. We said for this sin you have this punishment, this sin. Actually the Quran prompts us to think further into it. Now we read about Saleh. So I'm just going to recap here. And then we're going to start off with the last verse of that story and go on. In the case of Nabi Hud, he is in a community. And Allah says, Akhahu. Akha here would mean that maybe they are all of the same root. It's not a community composed of variety of different tribes coming together in one location, sharing a common interest. Much rather, a tribe that is produced of an initial family. Possible, yes? The history of Hud is that Nabi Nuh had 3 sons. Ham, Sam, and who was the third one? Yaris. Okay, something like that. Now, they had their children, they settled in that land, and the whole of the community was an outcome of the offspring of one of the grandchildren of Nabi Nuh in the Arabian Peninsula near Yemen, this area, I guess, from what I remember of my reading. Now, these people had settled in one place, very good at agriculture, building huge buildings, and they had very, very lofty stature that last week we dealt with, big build. Now, their sin fundamentally appears to be not that they did not worship Allah and they worship their deities. Their sin appears to be their heartlessness arrogance, and brutality. That appears to be their sin. It is far more intimately connected than the pronunciation of a name Allah or otherwise. There was an inner perversion within them. But their perversion seems to be one of brutality. They are brutal people, arrogant to the core and brutal. Yes? Now, the punishment that came upon them was these winds. Yes? And Allah says you would see them as fallen trees because they were so big and huge, they were just casted. The interesting thing is that if you then study some of this literature of the Sumerians and the big godlike people they were talking about, and the era and the time that they fixed, and you look at the time of these particular tribes, you will find there's a lot of similarity. And could it be that there are two different versions of the same thing? In which case we can bring about reconciliation. But Hud told his people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remember, He has brought you into being after Nabi Nuh. So it seems that that story was retained by them. And then He gave you greater numbers, increased you in body. The last verse that deals with the story of Hud is فَأَنْجَيْنَاهُ وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ بِرَحْمَةٍ مِنَّا وَقَطَعْنَا دَابِرَ الَّذِينَ كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا وَمَا كَانُوا مُؤْمِنِينَ. Therefore, we delivered him and those who were with him by mercy from us. And we rooted out. This is what it says, rooted out. But قَطَعْنَا دَابِرَ means we cut the backs off, the lineage. Yes? Of the people who belied our signs and who were not believers. So, قَطَّعْنَا دَابِرَ الَّذِينَ كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا means we have cut them off, as if there is no trace of them. Finish. Yes? It's just gone, done and dusted. Now, on the assumption, on the presumption, that, or hypothetically, had these people believed in what Nabi Hud was saying, that chastisement either would have been averted from all of them, or the Prophet would have directed them to another place. But it doesn't seem that the Prophet would have directed them. It seems that it would have been averted, because every Prophet seems to be saying the same thing. To Pharaoh as well, Moses said, if you do X, Y, and Z, your kingdom will become perpetual. Right? Otherwise, there's damnation awaiting you. The natural sequence of cause and effect. And the hadith that we read 2 weeks ago, that there is nobody but that they have a place in hell and heaven. It's undetermined where they will go. So as soon as one enters into heaven, the other one inherits his hell. And as soon as one goes into hell, the other one inherits his heaven, right? That Jannah that you have inherited, we explained the meaning of inheritance. It's just waiting to be taken. Yes? It's not there. It's not taken by anybody. It's waiting to be taken. And the Prophet said, you have a state in hell, and in heaven it's undetermined. And that is the charm of this world, that it is undetermined. Here or there, you're either way, place at any time. Yes? This world is far greater than what we understand. So now, Shoaib, can you read the verse 73 onwards to 85? The reason I'm asking you is because your name will be mentioned at the end. And we won't reach there today.
And unto some other Saleh, he said, O my people, worship.
What about the Arabic? You don't have it?
No.
Okay, go on then, English.
You want to? No.
Yes.
Worship God. You have no God other than Him. There has come unto you a clear proof from your Lord. This she-camel of God is a sign upon you. Leave her to graze freely on God's earth, and cause her no harm, lest a painful punishment seize you. Remember when He made you vicegerents after Ad and settled you on the earth. You built castles for yourself on the open plain, and huge dwellings. So remember the boons of God, and behave not wickedly upon the earth, working corruption. The notables among His people who were arrogant said to those among them who believed and whom they deemed weak, do you know that Saleh has been sent by his Lord? They said, truly we believe in that wherewith he has been sent. Those who were arrogant said, truly we believe not in that which you believe. So they hamstrung the she-camel and insolently defied the commands of their Lord. And they said, O Saleh, bring upon us that wherewith you have threatened us, and if you are among those sent by God. So the earthquake seized them, and mourning found them lying lifeless in their abode. So he turned away from them and said, O my people, I indeed delivered unto you the message of my Lord, and advised you sincerely, but you love not sincere advisers. And Lot, when he was sent, when he said to his people, What, do you commit an indecency such as none in the world committed before you? Verily, you come with desire unto men instead of women. Indeed, you are a prodigal people. And the reply of his people was but to say, Expel them from your town. Truly they are people who keep themselves pure. So we saved him and his family, except for his wife. She was among those who lagged behind. And we sent down a rain upon them. So behold, how the guilty fared in the end. And into Midian.
That's right. So then we come to Nabi Saleh, and he was sent to Samud. So it appears that the people saved by Hud went and settled in another place. With the passage of time, a lot of time, they became very settled, very sophisticated, learning techniques of agriculture, building castles, carving houses within mountains. It is said about them that they were very, very affluent, very affluent. And there were 9 families who were chiefly controlling the whole of that community. This affluence made them very arrogant. So not only indulgence in gambling, consumption of alcohol, worshipping together other than God, but licensing everything that is morally wrong. What is important here to understand is that consumption of alcohol is one thing, gambling is one thing, exploitation of the other is quite another, and being arrogant is quite another. Because we don't normally see people being destroyed due to consumption of alcohol or gambling. Gambling is a social evil. But we do see the Quran time and again frowning to a level upon the attitude of arrogance that it does not frown upon anything else. And arrogance and exploitation. Now, you know the Titanic, the story in the Titanic, right? Not even God can sink this with that arrogance, and it sunk. I'm not saying there's any connection, but human arrogance definitely is a means for bringing down chastisement. But this chastisement does not seem to be on the spur of the moment that God gets angry and says, I'll destroy you. How do you say this? But a product of moving away from God is arrogance. Because bear in mind, they're mutually inconsistent. If a person subscribes to authority beyond whom there is no authority and who is the sole authority, the scope of arrogance does not remain. Yes? Whenever a person subscribes to God, it's inconsistent with arrogance. Because we are saying God is the authority, and beyond that, He is the sole authority. He can do whatever He wants. So, movement away from God, even if it is in the name of God, it is a movement away from God like Shaitan. Yes? He understands God, he believes in the existence of God, but not truly acknowledge God's authority from within himself. And that's perversion and movement away. Yes? So this arrogance that they had through the worship of other than God, as I said, person can be worshipping God by name Allah and be perverted from within through arrogance. Arrogance and devotion to God are mutually inconsistent. They cannot exist together. This arrogance then very easily leads to exploitation of the other. Now here in their case as well, what happens is that there is an earthquake on its way. The tectonic plates are moving. They are moving. So intervention takes place. And Nabi Saleh is brought about. So Nabi Saleh tells them, look, mend your ways. And then we have one of two choices. Either I move you away from here, which he understood deep within his own insightful self, or we pray and you yourself become the active agents to somehow rebalance the dynamics of the earth where you suffer minimal damage. Can you see that? And you get away from it. But your arrogance, exploitation of the other, will definitely bring about damnation which nature is bringing towards you. Now, if we can just pause there and look into it again. The Prophet of Islam said, where there is a lot of adultery, there will be earthquakes. From this hadith, it seems that the human nature and nature at large are in sync. They're operating together. It's very difficult to separate the two and to analyze them individually. But in our analysis, we are making individual analysis and we want to join them in as well. So in the case of the floods of Noah, an iceberg has fallen inside the ocean. The waters have risen. The tsunami is on its way. It's going to take hundreds of years to reach here, but it will reach. It will reach. There will be ecological change. It happens. If one part of the earth is affected, the other part will be eventually affected. On the other hand, an earthquake is happening and it cannot happen on the spur of the moment. It needs causative system to enable it to happen. So the tectonic plates are moving. Here, therefore, there is intervention and the prophets are asked to say through good admonition. Yes? On the other hand, what seems to be the case is that the nature is working in itself and through the human input. In which case, the human being is allowing the nature to be good and produce even more, or to shut its doors of mercy upon the human being and behave in a very erratic manner. Yes? In a manner in which it punishes. And you see this within the Quran again and again and again. That they become arrogant and they say, don't feed any miskin today. And by the time they got to their fields, the crops were all eaten away. And then they said to themselves, indeed, we have been oppressive ones. So then they blamed themselves that they became the cause, and their arrogance became the cause for nature to behave this way. And had they not been arrogant, nature would have averted this particular thing. So it talks about a two-way relation. So in the first one, nature is acting in its own way. The human transgression is secondary. Yes, and the byproduct is the destruction of the human beings, which can be avoided by the production of these prophets and intervention. And by the second analysis, it is that the human being are making the nature behave in that way. And I think we can see aspects of both. And it's very intriguing when we discover Quran in this way, as to the life of nature and the interactive nature of human beings and nature with each other. How they interacting, how they influence each other. Yes? But it seems that human being is a phenomenally active agent that can actually avert calamities within nature and can make nature behave in a very compatible manner, conducive manner to the growth of human being and the well-being of the human being. And hence we have all these hadiths, give sadaqah and this sort of balas will be repelled, so on and so forth, because here we are inputting something into nature. And nature is reciprocating. It's a beautiful understanding. Now, unlike the people of Nabi Hud, who were not at that level of sophistication, where they could ask him for a sign, the people of Saleh were sophisticated. They said, look, we really don't make any sense of what you're saying. Yes? Your arguments don't mean anything to us. What it seems is that the rational arguments were not being acknowledged. So there were two groups. The mustakbirin, the very arrogant ones, probably of the 9 families, who wanted to assassinate Nabi Saleh, and the mustad'afin, the downtrodden ones, the exploited ones. So these arrogant ones said to the mustad'afin, what do you think of what Saleh is saying? Because they previously used to command their respect. They said, look, we believe in what Saleh is saying. They were brought over by Saleh's rational arguments. Every prophet has spoken rationally. Before speaking spiritually, he's spoken rationally. There has to be greater purpose. How can these stone carvings do this for you? How can they have created the earth? But they themselves have been created. So these people who are the haughty ones, the arrogant ones, they say, well, we are totally not believing in whatever he is saying. And on many occasions we find the Quran saying that the arrogant ones would always say to Nuh, look at them, the lowest of the low follow you. And no one said, I don't know what is in their heart. Their God knows best. They might be the best of the best. Who knows? So then they said, look, your arguments are not convincing to us. Bring us a sign. Yeah? Now, the sign was the camel. Here something is happening now. And it's actually adding to the story in one way or the other. Had they not asked for the sign, their damnation would have been avoided or postponed. But it seems from the language of the Quran that whenever the sign is asked for, there is always a warning that once this sign comes, you will not be spared. Because the argument will be devastated, finished. So now nature is behaving in a way in which the nature is conscious about what is happening. They have had their sign, they have transgressed, they have behaved arrogantly, go for it. It is as if nature is restraining herself, and waiting and giving respite. And God is saying the same thing. That look, once the sign comes, you will have no respite after that. So this camel is brought. He says to them, this is the camel of Allah. Camel of Allah means, look, it's not an ordinary product by the workings of this world. It's by another type of working, accommodated by this world. It's natural as anything else, but through supernatural workings. By supernatural, I don't mean unnatural. I mean beyond the appreciation of the common mind of the workings of nature. Yes, supernatural, not as unnatural. Yes. So the camel came and let it graze in the earth of God. This is not your land, not your land, not your land. The camel is in free land. Yes, it's eating in a land that doesn't belong to any of you. Leave it. Now the thing of this camel was that it used to eat all day long and give milk to everybody. It was a sign. Can you see that? There is your sign. Where will you find a camel that gives you enough to feed all of you? Where do you see a camel that just consumes like the way this camel is consuming? So that was a sign, and they recognize this now. The sign only comes when the intellect has died, or there's an obstinate attitude. To awaken the intellect that, look, this is beyond anything I can comprehend. So therefore, the one who is inviting me through this sign needs to be paid heed to and heard properly. Yes? The Prophet made the same claim. He said, if I were to tell you there are enemies behind this mountain who are waiting to ambush you, would you believe me? You've never lied. He said, if that's the case, then know that there is Allah. Can you see that? It's always based on something that brings about some type of an acknowledgement from the people. So they said, give us a sign. So this camel was brought. What they did was, they saw this sign, and they saw how the people's faiths were being renewed. They sent the worst among them to go and slaughter the camel. فَبَعَثَ أَشْقَاهَا. They sent the most wretched of them. Yes, not in this surah. وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا فَبَعَثَ أَشْقَاهَا. The worst of them, the most wretched. And this is what Imam Hussain said as well to the one who was slaughtering him, you're the ashqa. Yes, it's amazing how these things happen. That the ashqa finds their way to the best one. It always happens without fail. The Prophet said to Ali sallallahu alayhi, none will kill you save the ashqa. The most wretched of them will kill you. And this is what that blind Sahabi of the Prophet said when Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad put him to death. He said, I was hopeless of Shahada. I had prayed to God to send the most wretched of His creatures to kill me in Allah's way. And you are it. I have no doubt now. Yes? So the most ashqa is the only one that is prepared at that point. And that is also working of nature. These are the dynamics of nature that are phenomenal. Their sin was not their consumption of alcohol, nor their gambling, fundamentally their arrogance. And secondarily, their exploitation. This was their sin. However, even that could have been something that could have been given respite had they not been arrogant enough to say, give us a sign. And then when the sign came, at the peak of the arrogance, they killed them and said, bring us what you promise. The Prophet said, 3 days and you're gone. Imagine, 3 days and you're gone. But before the slaughter, he did not say 3 days. Everything was still in the balance. Everybody was between hell and heaven. Can you see that? Either hell, either heaven, either hell, who knows? But once the camel was slaughtered, destiny became final. Here comes a question, can anybody at this point come out of the damnation? Nabi Yunus' story shows us yes. Even after that decisive cutoff point, there seems to be a cutoff point, there can be deliverance. There can be. If they come out of the state of arrogance. Can you see that? In any case, he said to his people, they are not going to leave, they are going to stay here. And because they are going to stay here, the natural sequence of events are directing themselves to this land. Yes? I will take you with me, come out with me. Now imagine, it's a test of faith for the Mustadafin. It's a huge test of faith. Can you see that? Somebody is telling you, leave your house, leave your friends, leave your family, come with me. Trust in me, I know what's going to happen here. And you think, right, if he's got it wrong, I've lost everything. If I come back, they are never going to stop mocking me. Imagine how much faith it requires by the believers to follow the Prophet. Yeah? It's not an easy task even after bringing faith in the Prophet. It's really tough. Anyway, he takes them away. Quran explains it in 2 or 3 ways. A mighty blast overtook them. A mighty shake and a quake overtook them. So it appears from the story that in 3 days or something, what happened was that they heard a mighty cry. Either that cry's intensity was such that it killed them, or the shaking killed them. But in some other surahs it says they were sitting and they're gone. They were sitting, they were dead. So it appears that this quake that came, there was such a loud clap, bang, blast, as it was coming, that blast killed them before it started to shake. Yes? So that was their sin. In proper sequence now comes Nabi Ibrahim. And with Ibrahim comes Nabi Lut. But look at the words that are coming here. Look at the words that Lut uses. That you are committing an act of indecency. You are being promiscuous. And this is indecency to the level that is not acceptable. Here is what I understand. Yes? That the people of Nabi Lut understood the meaning of indecency. If they had that particular form of sexuality, but they did not consider it as indecent, Nabi Nuh would not have been able to make sense to them by saying, you are doing something indecent. Now, in our further discussions and our broader discussions, we have already stated that sin is determined more by the attitude of the sinner than the act committed by the sinner, so long as it's not transgressive upon another. Yes? So if a person is committing an act thinking that this is transgression upon God, then they are creating that sense of sin within themselves. and then they will be punished in accordance with it. And that's why it is said that the acts of sin and devotion are relativistic. Yeah? A single prayer of a saint is worthier than a whole year of the likes of other than the saint. We have this, don't we? So the quality of sin is determined by the of the sinner. So these people's response to know is, these are people who want to be pure in the doctrine. Otherwise, if a person has sexual orientation, and if they don't see anything wrong with the sexual orientation, then no would not make sense of then they would not make the sense of the statement of no, that you are being highly promiscuous, indecent. What's the indecency in this? Can you explain to us? He says you find your desires with man. Nobody else has done this before. It shows that it was ingrained in their minds that this is an indecent act. And then they were being very indecent. Now, indecency has an ocean. If you were to connect this with Adam's story and the whole of the issue of nakedness, and I've sent you clothes that you cover yourself with, Adam and Eve's private parts were revealed, you can see that it is all somehow connected. Arrogance, yes, exploitation, self-belief to the extent that God is not needed, and indecency. You can see through these mentions of the prophets that the Meccans were being told that all the ingredients of damnation are within you. This is what happened to the previous nations before you. And hence the reason for quoting Nuh, Hud, Saleh, Lut. So they could see that no, there is a connection here. And we should be mindful. Now, the story of Nabi Lut therefore needs further analysis. That they were being indecent and they recognized that their level of indecency, and they recognized that they were mocking at values that they understood to be right and fulfilling, the best befitting values, and most acceptable by God. They knew that. So that in their act of indecency, they were actually obstinately, arrogantly defying God and not caring about it. And they were erecting other gods that justified this act. And deep inside, they knew they were wrong. So then you say, well, why weren't the Meccans destroyed? The answer is obvious. No matter how beastly these people were, the majority of them did not belong to these camps. They didn't. There was a variety of people there in all that region, Makkah and otherwise. Yes? Two, maybe they were far more naive and jahil, ignorant. Whereas these people who are being mentioned here were not ignorant. They were downright arrogant, despite understanding the truth. They were downright indecent, knowing this is indecent, not with any shred of naivety. Whereas the Meccans are being told, look, this is indecency. Don't approach this. Don't kill your children. Don't do this. Don't do that. This is either a great crime, it is filth, or it's indecency. They're being explained to. But these people, on the contrary, seem to be knowing that these are indecent things. So now, if somebody asks me the punishment of Nabi Lut, is it because they were transgressing upon others, because they were ill-treating their guests, exploiting, raping men? I would say not necessarily. Their acknowledgement that what they are doing is highly indecent. If you look into the history, the people of Nabi Lut were extremely affluent, very rich, affluent people. And it seems that one of the crimes that comes with affluence is promiscuity, if it is not checked. Promiscuity and indecency that is then arrogantly justified. Yeah, so what? And that's the attitude we have in many of the affluent countries. That people who are ignorant and naive are genuinely ignorant and naive. But then there are people of the high class who are not ignorant or naive. They are downright arrogant and justifying their level of indecency. Yes? And they're highly indecent. So it seems that what is happening here is that they themselves are the active agents in procuring this punishment. So now, I ask, was this punishment already going to come, this natural event? Because it is not uncommon that stones fall from the sky. Yes? We've seen fish fall from the skies, haven't we? These are all natural events. There's a meteorite shower and stones are falling. So now, there's a meteorite out in space heading towards them. Yes? Then we know he's saying to them, punishing them. You are doing wrong. There's an intervention, immediate intervention. Two angels are coming in the depth of the night. The two angels are saying, it is confirmed that these people are going to be punished. Yes? There is no question of delivering them, unlike the other prophets. Nabi Nuh said, we can avert it. Nabi Hud said, it can be averted. Nabi Saleh said, it can be averted. The angels came, they said, forget it. There is no respite for these people, it's done. The deed is done with them. Can you see that? Otherwise, they would have come and said to Nabi Nuh, admonish them, give them some time. No. Alaysa subhu biqareeb. Morning is the time when these people are going to be destroyed. It's very, very near. They will not reach because they came to get those angels from this reading the Quran, right? And he said, go to my daughters. Why do you want to rape my guests? Yes? Commit this indecent act and put me to shame. So if they said to no, don't worry, they will not be able to reach us. We are protected. Yes? We are messengers of your God. We have come to deliver you and those who believe in you. Look at what unfolds in their story. It's amazing. We will take you out at night for Asri. Sarah is at night. Come out at night. Nobody even look back. These are the clear instructions from the other wider reading. Nobody even look back. Move apart from your wife. Illa ajuzan. Except for the old woman. Kanat min al-khabirin. She will be of those who are destroyed. Amazing, isn't this? Destiny is set. They know the minds of each and every one of the people. That this woman is going to think this way, the causative cycle for her is running in this way, she will interact with the situation in this way, this will be her natural reaction, she will look back and turn. Lut, don't stop her, let her go. It is destined for her to be destroyed. Now, she used to say to the people, it's fine, whatever you're doing, and she was very decent herself. And you know, this husband of mine, he's mad. Yes, that's what she used to say, that this husband of mine is mad. So now, on the one hand, the meteorite or something is breaking up in the sky. Yeah? It's arriving. The time is by the morning, so the angel knows the precise time when it's coming, the shower of rocks will come by the morning. Our task is to take you and the few with you out, because you're good people. Here the question is not of averting. Can you see that? How beautifully the Quran unfolds and opens its meanings up to us. In the case of Nuh, it was one of possible aversion or taking them on the ark. Nabi Hud, he said we can avert it totally. Saleh said we can avert it totally. In the case of Lut, you can't avert it. You can't do it. It's going to come on this place. Either take the whole town with you or take a few with you, whatever. But are you seeing these variations in the Quran? The subtleties of the Quran. It's beautiful. It's phenomenal. So here, the human agency could not have possibly interacted with nature to allow nature to behave differently. Nature was set to behave in a particular way, and that was a done deal. Can you see that? Two, there was no scope of any change of any status, unlike with Nabi Yunus. The whole status was changed immediately. The damnation was averted. Why? Because these are the people who are going to be destroyed, these are the people who are going to be saved. One amongst your group belongs there who will find her way back. It is so precisely and meticulously calculated. Can you see that? So they come out, she sees he's a madman, she goes back, the shower comes in, she sleeps in her bed, shower comes in by the morning, and they're all وصلى الله على محمد وعلى الطيبين الطاهرين. We're going to start with Nabi Shuaib next week, inshallah. And their sin is of a different kind as well. So if anybody wants to say something or add or ask. Go on, you're ready to go.
Just one thought occurs to me. How would we, philosophically speaking, establish the link of reciprocity between man's discretion, man's disobedience, and nature's reaction to it, unless we endow somehow nature with consciousness?
Nature is conscious.
That's the point.
You see, this begs the question, doesn't it? That are we operating in a finer dimension than what we understand? And it seems absolutely. لَنُرِيَهُ مَلَكُوتِ. Allah says about many prophets, but about Ibrahim says, and we showed Ibrahim the malakut of samawat wal ard. Now malakut is a state that envelopes the mulk. Yes? And this is a state of consciousness. Can you see that? And we have that malakut in us. And so the malakut and the malakut interact. It makes a show, reflects itself and manifests itself in the mulk. And our amr is not but a single word, kun fayakun, and it happens. So that's from the malakut into the mulk, and the mulk accommodates it brilliantly. And that's why I've always said that there is no eternity in any law of the universe. There is no eternity. A lot of it happens spontaneously. But once it arrives in the mulk state, that spontaneity, or whatever you call it, is always fitted into an eternal causative system. Can you see that? It's amazing. So we would say, oh yeah, we should have calculated this, had we known these factors. But the fact is that how it appears to us, there were no factors to calculate it from. It's happening spontaneously. Interventions and everything is happening haphazardly right now. Yeah? That's the charm of this world. Anything can happen. But we have discussed this in our philosophical lessons in philosophy. Yeah? I will, inshallah, meet next week. We've got 2 more lessons next week. So next week is the last one we'll finish. Thank you.